Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I know people are still coming in, but I also know it's a really tight geolocal schedule at the moment, so I don't want to waste too much time waiting. So I suggest we get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for making time to join us today for this in a very packed, very exciting geolocal schedule. This is a 1 hour session on faster evidence, harder questions, AI, and the evolution of evaluation. And in this session, we aim to examine how evaluators are increasingly turning to AI-enabled platforms to respond to mounting pressures for speed, scale, and relevance, but precisely at the moment when trust in data analysis and public institutions is under strain. My name is Kerry Albright. I'm an advisor and head of the Evaluation Knowledge Management Unit at the Asian Development Bank's Independent Evaluation Department, and I'm your moderator for the session today. I'm joined by three fantastic panelists. Our first speaker, Nea-Mari Heinonen, is the lead evaluation specialist at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. In her role, she's been piloting AI and data science approaches at MOFA, and she's going to be talking to us about their new platform, OpenEval.fi. Our second panelist is Anna Guerraggio. She is the Chief of Engagement and Communications at the United Nations Development Programme. She has a background in behavioral sciences, and she's now embedding these skills alongside strategic communication in the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP. And she's going to be talking to us about UNDP's AIDA platform. And then our final panelist is my colleague, Maya Vijayaraghavan. She's a principal evaluation specialist at ADB's Independent Evaluation Department, where she leads work on strengthening evaluation methods, data analytics, and the use of AI, amongst other things. And she's going to be talking about ADB's EVA platform. So attendees, please hold your questions until the end. We're going to hear the presentations first, but obviously please feel free to type them in Q&A as we go along. And my colleagues Jill and Anna will be helping to pick these up. So first of all, let's turn to Nea-Mari. Nea-Mari, you've got around 9 minutes. Please take it away.
Thanks very much. Let me just quickly share my screen here. Okay, now I think I'm enabled. Just a second. So here we go. I hope you can see it. Okay, thanks.
We can.
So thanks very much for inviting me to this panel. It's my pleasure to join you and everybody around the world. I'm Nea-Mari Heinonen, and I speak as an expert in the MFA Development Evaluation Unit of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland, not really as a representative of the ministry as such. I will first give an overview of our evaluation and AI-related tool, and then discuss the questions of faster evidence and harder questions parts later on. So really, what is OpenEval? This is our tailored AI-assisted evidence search tool. It is open access, cloud-based, a platform that serves different stakeholders and enables the users to search Finland's development cooperation related evaluation results. It's a sister to OpenAid.fi, which is a statistics platform, but also a sister to AIDA of UNDP, which you will hear a little bit more in a moment. So currently our platform hosts 300 centralized and decentralized evaluation reports from 2010 onwards, but we also aim to make it a living database. So we keep updating the database as new evaluations are published. It uses LLM, large language models, machine learning, and Gen AI, and also RAG-based architecture. It's not conversational, so we have some other AI assisting tools for the conversational types of tasks at a corporate level. AI in this case is used in different parts of the tool. I will not go into the technical details, but in addition to AI, we are using some rule-based functions as well. It was launched a year ago, so it's 1 year old. But for us as a ministry, it was quite important. It was a pioneering pilot, which resulted in a public good by the ministry, the first of its kind. Then why did we develop it? Well, basically, we wanted to improve the use of evaluation information, which is the motivation for many of such tools. We wanted to extend the shelf life of each report and also by that accumulating knowledge. Also some efficiency gains for future evaluation assignments, which I will demonstrate in a moment. And also it's part of our public accountability tools. And of course, last but not least, we wanted to build our own capabilities about using AI. And assisting us, of course, was the enabling environment for the government. So we were able to really embark on these pilots and find a way forward. So what can we really do with this tool? We have built this tool to serve many different purposes, and I will briefly just introduce a few of them. Basically, we developed a kind of a framework that showcases the different use cases for what OpenEval can serve in. These are what we call defined as reused, redefine, and repurpose framework, which means that we can use the information as is in the tool. We can also refine it in quantity or quality, and also we can transform the information to some other use purposes. And there's a framework which can be found online that helps the users to navigate these different uses, which can span project and policy planning and implementation kind of tasks to also evaluation. And here we have some examples from the evaluation side of things, how we can use OpenEval. Basically, we can, for instance, extract some results examples. We can use it for triangulation and validation of different policies and programs, and also other types of reporting. We can identify information gaps and also improve the evaluation design based on some of the existing information that we have and can search through this tool. Then I will give you a few examples here. This is an example where I'm synthesizing results across policy objectives. So if you're going to openeval.fi, you can filter information by policy objectives and extract the information. And you will be able to do this across the different reports simultaneously. So that's a great advantage. You can export the findings there and use it, for instance, for syntheses. And also we've used them for annual reports from our own evaluation unit. Example number 2 is that we can use it for identifying evidence gaps. And this is really an innovation that we are quite proud of in terms of our OpenEval. It allows you to get an overview of what evidence is there and what might be some gaps in the evidence coverage. You can sort this by, for example, here we have evaluation criteria, but you can also sort it by different topics such as the SDGs, or also by time, the publication year, basically. And this we will use for our rolling 3-year evaluation plan, for instance, and also in individual evaluations during the inception phase. Example number 3, we can extract some of the outputs from OpenEval again and do some other analysis. Here, for instance, there's an overview of what the kind of distribution of target groups have been according to the evaluation reports. And when I have filtered through the positive results using the sentiment filter, I'm able to then use that output and do something like this. And this was, for instance, used in our annual report again. And my last example, we can export the text passages from the tool for further analysis with some data science and NLP techniques. The word cloud, for instance, here is again something taken from OpenEval as the outputs for results from evaluations, and then compiled as a word cloud using some tailored stop word removal and some further coding on this. And the other one is a clustering exercise based on the outputs, which is looking at the different recommendations on a particular theme, such as women and girls, and looking at the different clusters for recommendations that emerge from the evaluation report, which was, for instance, used for informing this evaluation's design and focus. So my last points here are now addressing the session topics. What is the faster evidence? Is there faster evidence? Well, in this case, yes. OpenEval helps us forming the various kind of overall pictures. It helps us getting summaries and visualizations and looking at the overall status of evidence that we have. It saves us a lot of time when we are searching the information across different reports all at once. So we have, with this, we have kind of an optimized search, if you like, instead of having to prompt or doing things from scratch every time. And we also have control over the corpus because it's a RAG-based model. And then it enables quick use of existing knowledge because you can get the direct passages from the original report. So this is facilitating easier use. And also, as you saw from the examples, I can refine the outputs with some other tools, such as Copilot or some hard coding, as was done in some of the cases. My last bit here is the challenges. What are yet still the harder questions that we face? Well, tools like OpenEval, is it an never-ending project? To some extent, it might be because we need some updates, version and model upgrades, and also because we are using some readily available building blocks from third parties. There's the risk of deprecation existing, I think, in some cases, which we don't really know about yet. Then also the whole concept about text as data and text as evidence, it might be new to some people. Although qualitative methods have been there for a long time, there seem to be a little bit of differing reactions now with the quantification of the use of reports and text, and using text analysis and NLP as computational techniques. And maybe they felt that they're not fully transparent, understandable, and not really the type of human originated evidence or analysis that people have been used to previously. And of course, there's the mushrooming of various tools. It can lead to confusion and also the suitability questions, whether they are suitable for co-use across different tools or across different organizations. And really, who gets to define the purposeful, meaningful, and optimal usage in the case of evaluation? That's a big question that we're currently wondering about. And also, from the user side, it is quite a demanding task to help people understand how the different tools work. And even us, we are still learning. And also from the user side, it requires the adoption of a new search logic. It's not really the kind of traditional hierarchical folder structure or the categorization used by metadata. This is something different that we need to now somehow adopt. And lastly, what are the capabilities to interpret the outputs? So if the users are really, if they are trained, if we have cheat sheets in place and also some transparency features in the interfaces, what if all of that is not enough and we really are still hampered by the kind of technical nature of things? And I have many more, which I will share in a moment during the panel discussion. Thanks very much. There's some references here, which I will share. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Nea-Mari, and thanks both for sticking to time, but also for getting us off to a really interesting start. Let me turn now to Anna.
Just give me 1 second. Okay, that's good. And I will start sharing the presentation. Okay, tech part almost set, ready to go. Okay. Thank you very much, Kerry and friends and colleagues. It's really a pleasure to be with you all here today to discuss how AI is shaping evaluation. Two quick disclaimers before we start, which I hope will not cause a massive drop in the audience. The first one is, as Kerry said, I'm a behavioral scientist by training, so I do people much better than I do machine. So please forgive me if my terminology today will not be 100% accurate. And also, I became a mother 5 years ago, which naturally changed my life absolutely for the better. So there will be a few parenting references in the slides, so please bear with me about that. So the title of today's presentation is framed around the opportunity that AI provides to produce faster evidence and allow us to answer a question. And I think that this is a very important discussion because given all the hype that is surrounding AI, we need to start finding some answers to these questions. To me, the AI revolution is only part of the change that we need to do our job better. And we should absolutely not forget the other side of the equation, what I would call the human revolution or the revolution of care, which in our field has a lot to do with engagement and communication. But let me first start with the AI part, which is what I was asked to talk about today. So AIDA, which stands for Artificial Intelligence for Development Analytics, was born in 2021, right in the middle of COVID. And it was really wonderful to have her because at UNDP, we produce more than 300 evaluations per year. And so over time, we have gained so much wisdom. We have now 7,000 and plus reports in our evaluation resource center. And so we wanted to make this evidence base much more accessible. It was already publicly available, but it was difficult for users to identify patterns across reports or extract lessons learned. So we built AIDA to unlock this evidence, to make it easier to search, to explore, and to synthesize. And from the beginning, we made AIDA a public good. So like all new parents at first, we didn't know what we were doing really. We spent a lot of time training AIDA, and just like with kids, it really took a village. We had a team of research associates who manually reviewed around 500 evaluation reports. They extracted the paragraphs, they labeled as findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And then they further classified these reports using a taxonomy that we collectively built in the office of more than 200 categories. And this manually large data set formed the basis for training the machine. So we really and truly tried our best and invested a lot of time and a lot of resources in AIDA. And while we remained proud parents, we started to realize that something was off. AIDA was very powerful. She could extract paragraphs, she could translate non-English evaluation, she could analyze sentiment, generate summaries. But as we used it more, we noticed that generating the insights was really testing our patience. Because every time we wanted to tweak our research approach, our taxonomy, or the system, we basically had to start from scratch. And not to mention, the system was very, very expensive to maintain. So one day we finally understood that the world in which AIDA was growing was different from the one we had experienced as researchers and evaluators. So by 2024, conversational AI tools had become the norm. So with ChatGPT and generative AI, users suddenly expect much faster, more iterative, and more natural engagement. So in a way, AIDA was already old, despite only being 3. And so we had to change our approach and rebuild the system to make it sure that it was sustainable and user-friendly. So we rebuilt AIDA as a chatbot. And this is where the child metaphor falls a little bit. I'm sorry, but the goal was to have faster responses, easier updates, and a more natural way to interact with the evidence. So the current version of AIDA uses a much simpler architecture. The reports are extracted and converted into vector representation so that the evidence is retrieved based on meaning rather than the taxonomy we were using before. Then we have Azure Search that handles the retrieval, and then OpenAI that models, that interpret the queries, that summarize the evidence, and that supports the conversation. So this is what AIDA looks like today. The interface is quite simple, as you can see. There are filters to narrow down the search. You can ask a question, like I did in this case, on the comparative advantage that UNDP may have compared to other agencies in promoting job. And you get a very comprehensive responses, complete with citation and sources. And of course, you can ask AIDA to summarize it for you. So AIDA is now 5, exactly like my son, and I can testify that it's a beautiful age. She speaks 100+ languages by default and responds much more quickly than before. It can be upgraded in days rather than months, and the costs are significantly lower. It can format responses in different ways. You can request a table, you can request a bullet point or a summary, and she also remembers the ongoing conversation. So follow-up question can help refine the results. However, just like a 5-year-old, the memory span is very short. AIDA doesn't save any conversation. So once you navigate away from the chat, you lose everything. So it's best to complete a line of inquiry in one sitting. So we're using AIDA a lot to, similarly to what Anne-Marie said before, to deliver reflections or short synthesis of lessons learned, to produce summaries of evidence that inform the design of our thematic evaluation, and also to help carrying out some formative assessment of new policies so that we can provide UNDP senior management sort of a reality check of whether the direction they're proposing is backed up by evidence. So to return to the original question, did AI help us to do our work faster? Absolutely. We are faster. We can cover much more ground. The answers we get are instant, but one thing that is often overlooked is the times it takes to verify the data. Because the first answer you get from AIDA is never the good one. You still need the human in the loop to verify and challenge the findings. So you should treat the first answer as a starting point rather than a conclusion. But clearly, one of the advantages of having AIDA as an internet platform is that she is less prone to hallucinations because it's constrained to a curated evidence base. And then if we ask ourselves whether AI has truly helped us to do our job better and find deeper answers, my honest answer is that it depends. AIDA started and in many respects still remains largely a tool for evaluators by evaluators. Last year, we have done some communication and outreach, which has successfully expanded our user base beyond the IO. But we have to be realistic because our numbers of users are still struggling to truly take flight. We try to access, to solve what we call the access hurdle. So we try to meet the potential users where they already are by integrating AIDA into the Evaluation Resource Center that our colleagues are more familiar with. But even with more accessible tools, we run into a structural wall, that is that UNDP still lacks an organized repository of evidence, which would allow us to be much more impactful. To me, ultimately, this is not a technology. It's not an infrastructure problem. It really comes down to organizational culture and incentives. Because we can build the most advanced AI search engine, but they will sit idle if the adults in our organizations are too rushed, are too time constrained, or do not want to ask the hard question. So to make tools like AIDA work, we have to engage the human element. We must work on incentivizing this curiosity, giving staff the space, the time, and the courage to actually want to dig deeper. And so fostering that curiosity is the work that I'm very happy to continue leading in the IO. And on that note, I stop my presentation. I give back the floor. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Anna. Thank you. And I love the parenting analogy. It immediately makes me think about what AIDA will be like as an adolescent. And maybe we can get into that in the chat. But now let's turn to our final speaker. Maya, over to you.
Thank you, Kerry. Okay, so I'm going to round out the presentation section of our session. I'll make it quicker than the others. It's basically going to walk you through EVA's journey, starting with evidence access to actually transitioning to evidence use. You'll see many parallels with what Nea-Mari and Anna have described. So our challenge was we had the evidence, thousands and thousands of reports, lots of lessons in each of those documents. So very rich content, but really hard to access and use quickly. As you can see, there's a whole stack of books, very hard to sort through that. And, you know, around the same time, demand also changed. There was a need for faster decision-making. Users demanded answers. They really weren't looking for documents and to look through it. So to respond to this demand, we built EVA. And what's different about EVA is it's an internal AI-enabled platform. And what it does is it facilitates efficient search, retrieval, and synthesis of evaluation evidence from the stock of the thousands of evaluation reports we have. So similar to the approach that AIDA took, originally it was very structured. There was tagging, many hours spent on identifying sections that actually made sense, and then extracting them. So that was useful, but it really wasn't flexible enough and meeting the increasing demands. So we evolved it from a search tool to one that with which you could actually have a dialogue. Because our users wanted conversational iterative answers. They weren't just looking for search results. So EVA also evolved, moving from a static search engine to more interactive dialogue, again facilitated by the emergence of generative AI tools since 2022. So basically, we want to move from capacity to impact. What does EVA now make possible? So it has a few core capabilities. It can rapidly extract lessons. It can synthesize across evaluations. And through this, it can actually provide real-time support for decision makers. Where I've seen it typically used now is in desk reviews at the inception phase. This could be either for evaluations or for new projects. And of course, for evidence synthesis. Just to give you an example, how is EVA used in practice? For example, you could ask a query, what lessons derived from evaluations can be applied to the design of urban projects? So this is at the inception phase of new project development. So EVA retrieves lessons across the stock of evaluations on this topic. It actually identifies recurring themes and generates a very structured summary. Obviously, the user shouldn't just take it at face value. What the user does is they validate it, they interpret it, and triangulate it from other sources of evidence. So now we come to the part where we talk about faster evidence, of course, but the questions that we get are much harder. So what improves? We do have faster access to relevant evidence. It enables rapid synthesis and iteration through the conversational follow-up. And of course, this leads to better use of institutional knowledge. But what becomes harder is ensuring the rigor and the credibility of the information that EVA puts out. Another issue is maintaining transparency and defining the role of judgment in all of this. So the core tension really is, speed versus rigor, efficiency versus depth, automation versus judgment, or, rules versus discretion, you could call it that. So the shift is really happening in terms of needing far less time to search and retrieve information, but a lot more time spent interpreting it. Looking ahead, what this really means for evaluation, not just ever, but all the AI tools in general, the bottleneck shifts from access to actually interpreting the output. This is where methodological clarity becomes really critical. Having well thought out guidance that evaluators can use will improve the clarity and the credibility of the use of AI. Obviously, with all of these new tools, the role of evaluators also evolves. Obviously, they have access to more information faster, but they have to spend a bit more time making sure that it's credible. So the path forward that I think ADB and a lot of other institutions have taken is on responsible use of AI, trying to strengthen both transparency, for instance, for having a really clearly traceable path from input to output, and of course, strengthening trust in the system, embedding rigor in all the workflows that are supported by AI, and of course, building evaluator capability, because these are new tools. But so what we've seen from both the examples from Finland and from UNDP and from ADB is AI can accelerate evidence generation and use, but ultimately credibility still depends on human judgment. So with that, I will hand it back to Kerry.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maya. And thanks everyone from our presenters for keeping so well on time. So we've heard three very interesting different examples, many similarities, some different things as well. Audience, please do type your questions. I'm sure there's been lots have been springing to mind as we've been going along. We'll get to them in a minute. But first of all, I wanted to sort of ask our panelists a few questions, and we're going to structure them really around the theme of this particular session. So thinking around the issues of speed, the issues of trust, and then the kind of the future, I guess. So panelists, I'm going to turn to you. Please keep your responses concise, maybe soundbite length, maybe no more than sort of 60 seconds or so if you can, because it'd be nice to hear from everybody, and also make sure that we don't run out of time, and that we can protect the audience Q&A. So let's start with speed, and really thinking about how AI is reshaping evaluation practice and expectations. And I wanted to turn to Anna first. Given your background, from a sort of engagement or communications lens, what do you think happens when speed is prioritized, and how does that affect perceived credibility?
Thanks so much, Kerry. I really think that expectations have shifted a little bit, and it's actually quite good that colleagues in the organization think that we can do things much, much faster. The problem, I think, comes when speed is the only thing that matters, and we privilege AI at the expense of other more, let's say, important and human beings. When I was thinking about this question, I think that there are three sort of traps that can affect the credibility of our work. The first is a function of how confident and secure AI appears. So the AI-generated text looks very good, but we know that AI looks for consensus, and so tends to cancel the messy contradictions, which are generally among the most important findings of evaluation. So when we apply AI to that analysis, I think that we risk having evaluations that erase the nuances, which we are supposed to highlight, which naturally make our reports, I would say, less useful and probably more banal, if you wished. The second one is the effect that AI has on us, on our overconfidence and expert bias, because I think that if we have been in this job for a while and the AI summary looks good enough, there is a risk that some of us would stop at producing evaluations that are based on new data, as we have seen it all. And then when we present this evaluation to the board or to senior management, we can't simply say, well, the AI synthesized it from 50 documents. We lose all our authority. So there is a credibility challenge around that. And I think that relatedly, and I think that everybody has noticed by now, the AI text looks very professional, but it's also very synthetic. So when our language feels automated, stakeholders tune out. They stop trusting the findings because it doesn't feel like it's a real human being that stands behind them. So I think that AI is giving us time back, but the real credibility test is whether we use this time to just feed the attention economy and churns out reports faster, of whether we reinvest this into human relationships and deep analysis that actually drive the change.
Great, thank you. And maybe now I could turn to Maya and to just ask you, in your context, where are you seeing that the demand for speed is strongest? And how do you think that AI has actually changed expectations of responsiveness, perhaps?
It's Kerry. Yeah, so I think at ADB, what I've noticed is the demand for speed is strongest where the decisions can't wait. For example, if we had access to the AI tools we have today during COVID, I think we could have provided a lot more real-time feedback and some, pretty good guidance to the ADB management and board. I think AI has changed not just the speed, but expectations in 3 different ways. First, I think timelines have really collapsed from weeks or months to everyone wanting near immediate answers. And second thing is, I don't think users rely that much on reports. What they want is really direct structured answers that they can use directly in decision making. And a third expectation, I think engagement has become much more iterative. People expect to ask, then to refine, and then get updated answers in real time. But the bar has also risen, as we've discussed in all 3 presentations. It's not just about being fast, it's about being fast and credible. So in terms of that, I think responsiveness means not just answering quickly, but also being able to show the evidence, explain the reasoning, and support the judgment. So I think AI has shifted evaluation from delivering documents to actually delivering defensible answers provided at the speed of decision making. So it's actually quite a lot that's being asked of us. And it's just one tool at our disposal with all the drawbacks that Anna has already highlighted. So I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Myra. And actually, that leads us really nicely into our second theme, really of trust. And by trust, I mean here not just sort of the ethics as they are in principle form, but actually real safeguards in practice. So things like transparency, accountability, and professional standards. So here, maybe let me turn to Nea-Mari and to say in your context, how do you actually operationalize transparency and accountability so that your users can really trust AI-assisted outputs?
Thanks very much. In the case of OpenEval, for instance, there were several design choices we made during the development process, which we thought could be important from the point of view of transparency and accountability. Being a government entity, I think this is particularly important consideration for us. OpenEval is part of our aid transparency tools, along with the OpenAid platform. So we built it not just as a technical tool, but also to serve these broader objectives. Within the tool, transparency was maximized using the RAG-based design, which retrieves the information from a data set. It's a closed data set of the documents that we have control over. Also using the original report passages as the basis for analysis is important for us, rather than using summaries, which is kind of reducing the burden on cross-validation and verification. We also tried transparently to inform the users of what the different functions of the tool are about and what do they do. We also included a number of disclaimers that clearly signal the limitations openly to the user. In terms of the accountability to the citizens, building an open access tool was important. Evaluations support accountability to the citizens themselves, so enabling simultaneous search through vast bodies of evidence really serves that purpose quite well. However, the limitations are that the human mind can only take in so much. Let's say the first 10 search results, and the true value of having these bodies of evidence, particularly textual evidence, comes from having computational tools to further analyze them. So the different use cases can be different in scope, and also the human brain can only process so much. So this is to say, accountability really takes different forms, depths, and applications. In our case, for instance, we can use the tool for accountability in relation to internationally shared goals, such as the SDGs, to see what the evidence says about Finland's engagement. Accountability to the differently enabled users, for instance, for us means that accessibility requirements were built into the tool right from the beginning, and there's also an accessibility note available there. So we also kind of openly invite all the users to report back to us if they notice any significant biases or questionable outputs and things like that. So these are examples what accountability and transparency really mean for us in terms of design choices.
Thanks, Nea-Mari. I mean, all of the things you mentioned are really important. I wanted to turn to Anna now, and to kind of again reflect on a similar question from AIDA's perspective, and to ask you, from your experience, what guardrails do you think are really needed to help prevent AI just becoming a shortcut for superficial engagement, I guess? And what does that mean for evaluators? How is it actually affecting the so-called humans in the loop?
Thank you so much, Kerry. Yeah, most of the safeguard debate has been about ethical principles, things like disclosure clauses or the representation of the global south. And I think these are all very, very important. But there are some other safeguards that I think we need to talk about. And they all have to deal with the human in the loop, which I honestly think it's also a horrible expression, because I don't think that anyone wants to be really human in the loop. But what I've been thinking about is that using AI too much has some potentially bad effects on our profession. The first one is that it affects motivation, because humans love to build things. Psychologists call it the IKEA effect, for those of you who are familiar with the Swedish furniture brand. So we value what we struggle to create. In evaluation, we love to work with messy data, and this is how we learn. So if the AI does too much the heavy thinking, it takes away the most meaningful and interesting part of the work. The second risk is that we're going to lose creativity. Now with AI, you can produce as many summaries or PowerPoints that you want. But if you fail to identify the story that you want to communicate, there is no summary or PowerPoint that can come to the rescue. And I think that the third risk is that, as Nea-Mari was saying, becoming humans in the loop will fry our brains, because AI writes so perfectly that finding the mistake is mentally exhausting. Over time, we get tired, we start paying less attention, and our muscle will start to atrophy. So I think that we need 3 guardrails, I was thinking. The first one is methodological. So to resist this flattening effect that I was talking about before, we must build interfaces that force evaluators to verify the sources, to trace the citation, and to explicitly hunt for quiet disagreements or minority voices. The second is really about talent. So we're really pleased that Maya was talking about capacities of junior or younger evaluators, because how can we build our analytical muscle if our junior staff have never had to sweat over raw data? So we need to enforce a sort of deliberate practice, or creating space where evaluators still do complex analysis. And the third one is institutional. And I've been very vocal about this in UNDP, that we needed to aggressively defend the efficiency dividend that AI is creating. So what are we going to do with the time that we're saving? We need to reinvest in what AI cannot do. We must force our organization to reinvest our time into finding the stories, into navigating the politics, and into really work on the analysis and the relationships that will drive change.
Thanks very much, Anna. Some provocative statements there. I'm sure that will stimulate some questions. So keep putting them in the Q&A. So just before we turn to the questions from the audience, I just wanted to get a couple of reflections on the future, I guess. And really thinking about, I guess most of us in the audience here are evaluators, maybe not all, to really think about some of the critical issues that we've got to think about as a community over the next few years, however many years you want to think ahead. So, Nea-Mari, if I could come back to you, from what you're seeing, what do you think will be the emerging challenges, and which ones of those will really help, what will define the future of AI in evaluation?
Thanks very much. Now I come back to the hard questions I mentioned in my presentation. Well, looking forward in a broader sense as the evaluation community, there are some really difficult questions that I think we have not yet adequately even started to think about or even finding management solutions for. I would like to frame my main concern as this. How do we really prevent that we don't end up in a wild west of AI usage, resulting in pseudo evaluation and evidence? There's a lot of political pressure to take up and start using AI as if it was a drug or a matter of just taking a course of pills that cures all kinds of assumed inefficiencies. Firstly, what is the AI that we are talking about? There's no one AI as a concept, and there are many tools, methods, and techniques under this concept. And I'm sure we're just causing confusion and misalignment when AI is treated as a synonym to Gen AI and some other specific tools, such as chat-based tools like Copilot and others. I think we should deliberately start being a bit more specific and avoid the usage of AI in its general sense. The different interpretations of AI are shaped by the different technologies that are available locally in the different organizations, and that is really the level of understanding by the users. And this can really result in a wild west of conceptual confusion. And secondly, how do we make sure that those that make decisions at different levels of the political decision makers or the organizational ones, that they really make informed decisions about what is appropriate usage of AI? How do we manage these unrealistic and misinformed expectations related to AI? Some of us have run, for instance, into situations when suddenly someone with limited understanding of evaluation has come up with a brilliant idea that let's ask this chatbot to analyze how successful this project has been. And the real risk is that we see at the moment is that decisions of use are being done at individual level. People who do whatever they please with their uptake of AI. And we will run into situations when people outside the evaluation community may have ideas about AI application which are undesirable from our point of view. And at the same time, the decision makers at the higher levels are making choices as part of the pressures to find cost savings without really understanding what is evaluation, and there's no mechanism for managing this sporadic ad hoc uptake. And this really can run the risk of ending up with a pseudo evaluation. So this is really my Wild West metaphor that I'm using here, putting the cart before the horse, and there's no one really driving to keep it on track. If you allow, I will still bring a few more points.
I think let's move on, Nea-Mari. Just hopefully we can bring some of your other points back into the Q&A. I just really want to protect the audience time, but lots of really interesting metaphors I've heard so far this evening. I just wanted to turn back to Maya, I guess, from your perspective again. What do you think is the single most crucial issue that we really need to tackle so that we can actually harness the best points about AI and the efficiencies without really eroding that trust and rigor that we've talked about this evening?
Okay. I think the one question that we can answer is, can we clearly show how the AI-generated answer was produced and verify that it is, in fact, grounded in credible evidence? I think if we can answer that one question, that would go a long way towards, transparency and accountability as well. I think if users can trace the outputs back to reliable, curated evidence sources, which I think is true for all three tools, understand how the answer was derived, and apply human judgment and validation before using it, I think that would probably, I think, help with the use of AI in evaluation.
Thank you very much, Maya, and thanks everyone. So I'm just turning to the Q&A. We've got some interesting questions in here. I think they do sort of cover the three themes that we were talking about in this webinar around speed, trust, and the future. So the first one we have here is from Amalia. This is to Anna, saying, does AIDA hallucinate? How valuable do you actually find it for generating insights?
Interesting question, and made me think about your comment about AIDA not being a teenager yet. So I think that our experience is that AIDA hallucinates very little because the database is internal, and because there is always a mention of the sources. It does a really good job in doing that. What AIDA needs to be challenged with, however, is that it tends to obsess over a few sources. So it tends to, once it finds a few good reports, it tends to go really deep and responding to your question just on a small set of evaluations. So you need to challenge and say, okay, expand your analysis to other evaluation, don't just quote one or two. So more than a matter of going too far or hallucinate, it's rather than it becomes perhaps too narrow in some of the response. The insights, I found them extremely valuable, sometimes too general. And I think it's partly a function of the way we write. That's my personal battle in the office. We tend to write overly political text and not to be super specific. And I think that if we want, as AI will go on, and if we want richer results from AI, we'll need to be a little bit more precise with our language and specific about what we mean, avoiding the jargon that sometimes it's very comfortable to use in our organization.
Thank you. There's another question here that actually goes to all three of you. In the interest of time, just maybe be really quick. It's from Alejandro, and he said that it's really nice to see all of these examples. Do you all offer APIs, basically so that the various AI tools can connect with each other? Is interoperability a dream, or is it possible to avoid evaluation silos? Maya, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think that's a long-term goal. I don't know how far we are from it, but we're making a small start, at least within the evaluation community of MDBs. I think eventually we would have to, have some sort of way to connect all these systems together.
Anna, I know you're trying something similar across the UN. Any reflections?
Yes, so as we speak, there is a meeting of UNEG, the United Nations Evaluation Group, exactly discussing how at least the UNEG database can be a source for connection among UN evaluation. On the UNDP side, same response as Maya. It's a publicly available platform. So if we want to use UNDP's evaluation as a comparison, feel free to go ahead and use it. But it's a long-term goal, not yet in place.
Great. And Nea-Mari, any collaboration on these issues across EvalNet or the bilaterals?
Yes, we're kind of exchanging the different lessons across the different donors. We have different working groups, and we are testing each other's tools and sharing a lot of thoughts on these different aspects. Our tool is confined in a kind of government confined cloud environment, so it doesn't really have any API in terms of external users, but as the others, this is a public tool and it can be used by anybody free of charge. So other than that, I think this is where we stand at the moment.
Great. And there's a bit of a challenge here from Matthew. I think it's interesting. So really great examples. Thank you very much. But they all come from relatively large institutions with staff and budget. So I don't know who wants to answer this question, but do you think that a modestly sized NGO could actually reasonably develop similar tools? Nea-Mari, your hand shot up. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, we are not big and we don't have massive resources. We are a very small unit and with very limited resources as well. Our lesson would be to encourage people to look into some of these already available solutions. They are not necessarily very expensive after all. And you can do also a lot with some of these publicly available, free of charge, open access tools as well. But really what it means that is you would have to have a plan, a purpose for what you want to do with the tool, what you want it to do for evaluation, and then select the tools and approaches based on that. Thanks.
Okay. And there's quite a long question here from Ali. But again, tell me who wants to answer this. He's really saying that he wonders whether we had the large language models at the core of each of our systems fine-tuned or trained on a set of curated data. Anna, I know that you mentioned that in your presentation. Or whether we used a few shot prompted for those tasks, or etc. So given the fact that this is quite a technical question, given the fact that the models are probabilistic and so potentially prone to errors, could you talk a little bit about the safeguards that you have in place to make sure that we do keep a human in the loop? And again, Maya, I can see your hand shooting up here.
Okay, I'll try and answer to the best of my ability. So yes, we have LLMs at the core of our system, and they have in fact been fine-tuned and trained on a set of curated data. So we started with a small sample, tested the models, refined it, gave it human feedback, and then improved it. And this is actually an ongoing process. It's not just, we don't just train it and leave it. I think the team that manages and maintains this tool actually tests it ever so often. And as you know, the technology is changing rapidly. So I think they sort of continuously try and improve it. And in terms of safeguards, I think one thing they've done is set the temperature really low or set really high. So basically, it has very, very little creativity built into it. So that's the first thing they've done. Secondly, there's a feedback function. So every single user at any given point in time can provide feedback. So that's another way of making sure that the model's not running off and doing things and giving outputs that, that really don't make any sense. And the fact that it's really using a constrained set of data and reports that have been, I'd say, vetted by ADB to some extent, that's another safeguard. It's not pulling stuff from all over the place. And it also provides clear links to the references from which the content is derived. So that's also an additional safeguard that's put in place, where you can clearly check the provenance of the information that's being put out by the LLM. So I'll stop there. I hope that answered Ali's question.
Yeah, I've got one, trying to push up against the clock. One quick question, maybe Anna, to finish with you, if you can be quick in the response. There's another challenge here from Amalia saying that, moving forward as multiple crises sort of interact or intersect, what do you think about AI's potential capacity to handle complexity?
I have no idea. That's the answer. In the sense that I think it will manage. It's not a matter of AI being able or not able to manage complexities. It's what our organization will do with it. I think that AI, we need to remember, it's just a tool. It's a tech tool. So it's our organization that need to manage complexities, not AI. AI will follow it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to kind of bring us towards a conclusion here, and maybe sort of reflect on a few sort of key takeaways that I at least heard from your presentation. And I think from Nea-Mari, I loved your Wild West metaphor, and I think it was clear that you're saying that you think that AI can really bring new opportunities to evaluation and the decision making, which it ultimately serves. But as an evaluation community, we've really got to unite better to ensure that we don't end up in this sort of Wild West of, you called it pseudo evaluation and evidence, but make sure that we're actually in the driving seat of defining appropriate use as subject matter experts. From Anna, again, I heard, AI offers incredible efficiency, But treating speed as our only goal really threatens the core of evaluation and what we stand for. So when machines handle all of the analytical thinking, we risk, from a behavioral science perspective, I guess, losing the cognitive struggle that is really required to build true expertise and the engagement that you really need to build trust. So the challenge isn't really using AI to write reports faster. It's, as you said, reinvesting the time that AI saves us into sort of human relationships, political navigation, and the critical judgment that really actually drive change. And then from Maya, AI can certainly help us accelerate access to evidence. But if we really want trust in that evidence, that really depends on whether we can explain and verify and stand behind what AI produces. So we're at time. I wanted to say a big thank you to all of my panelists and to our colleagues Gillian and Anna for helping on tech support and the Q&A. Thank all of you for choosing this session, joining us at this GLocal session. Thanks to GLocal for enabling this conversation. And I hope you all enjoy the very rich conversations that are happening over the rest of this week. Thank you very much and enjoy the next session. Goodbye for now.